Good evening, everyone. We'll call this meeting to order. We start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Well, this is the most crowded room we've had in a long time. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here with us tonight. Al, could we start with roll call, please?
Okay, and this is roll call for the regularly scheduled City Commission meeting of April 12th. Benson.
Benson here.
Benson is present. Brunig.
Brunig here.
Brunig is present. Sarda.
Sarda here.
Sarda is present. Maibaum.
Maibaum is present.
Maibaum is present. Minor.
Minor, present.
Minor is present. Schramm.
Schramm here.
Schramm is present. Weber.
Weber is present.
Weber is present. Mayor Johnson.
Johnson, present.
Mayor Johnson is present. City Manager Leon.
Leon is here.
City Manager Leon is present. City Attorney Denherter.
Denherter is here.
City Attorney Denherter is present.
You have before you the minutes of the work session of March 22nd, as well as the regular meeting of March 22nd. What is your pleasure?
Weber moves.
Schramm second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any commission discussion about the minutes? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. And any abstaining? Thank you. Next, you have before you the schedule of bills. What is your pleasure?
Minor moves to pay the bills.
Brunig second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any commission discussion about the bills? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission about our bills? Al, roll call, please.
Okay, and this is roll call for the schedule of bills. Brunig.
Brunig, aye.
Brunig is aye. Sarda.
Sarda, aye.
Sarda is aye. Maibaum.
Maibaum is aye.
Maibaum is aye. Minor.
Minor, aye.
Minor is aye. Schramm.
Schramm, aye.
Schramm is aye. Weber.
Weber is aye.
Weber is aye. Benson.
Benson, aye.
Benson is aye. Mayor Johnson.
Johnson, aye.
Mayor Johnson is aye. Schedule of bills passes 8-0.
Next, we have some proclamations this evening. We're going to start with an Arbor Day proclamation. So whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, with the city of Yankton celebrating its 34th year of being a Tree City, USA. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community, now therefore, I, Nathan Johnson, Mayor of the City of Yankton, do hereby proclaim April 30th as Arbor Day in the City of Yankton. Todd, I don't know if you want to speak to anything that we may have going on in the city?
Just a reminder that we do have a right-of-way tree planting grant program for anybody that's interested. Again, we're still taking down ash trees in the right-of-way. So if somebody wants to plant trees back, especially in the right-of-way, but if there's not room in a right-of-way, we're willing to come out and look at a property. But again, we pay 75% of the tree up to $100. And you can do multiple years. So if you have a big enough right away and want to do it over a couple of years, you could do a grant over 1 or 2 or 3 years. And we've also been asked in the past if commercial properties would qualify for that grant, and they would. So just a reminder that we want to see more trees planted. We are taking them down in the right of way, but we will help pay to put trees back in the right of way. So thank you very much.
And I utilized that program this year, and it worked very smoothly. Thank you. Next, it's Telecommunicators Week. So whereas emergencies can occur at any time that require law enforcement, fire, or emergency medical services. And whereas when an emergency occurs, the prompt response of law enforcement, firefighters, and emergency medical personnel is critical to the protection of life and preservation of property. And whereas the safety of our law enforcement officers, firefighters, emergency medical personnel, and other responders is dependent upon the quality and accuracy of information obtained from citizens who telephone the Yankton Dispatch Center. And whereas public safety telecommunicators are the first contact our citizens have with emergency services. And whereas public safety telecommunicators are the single vital link for our law enforcement officers, firefighters, emergency medical personnel, and other responders by monitoring their activities by radio, providing them information, and ensuring their safety. And whereas public safety telecommunicators at the Yankton Dispatch Center have contributed substantially to the apprehension of criminals, suppression of fires, and treatment of patients. And whereas each dispatcher has exhibited compassion, understanding, and professionalism during the performance of their job in the past year, therefore be it resolved that the Yankton City Commission declares the week of April 11th through 17th to be National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week in the city of Yankton. And we have Courtney here with us this evening. Courtney, is there anything you would like us to know about the work you've been doing the last year?
I don't have any news. Can you guys hear me? But we have a current opening for telecommuter. So if you would like to apply, it's on the city website. Other than that, I personally just thank you guys for your support, not only during Telecommuters Kid Week, but 365 days a year. So thank you for what you do. Thank you for supporting us in the community. Thank you.
Thank you for your work. I know it takes an incredible amount of expertise to know what you're doing in that control room, so thank you. And finally, we have National Library Week. So whereas libraries of all types are at the heart of their cities, towns, schools, and campuses serving their communities, and whereas libraries are accessible and inclusive places that foster a sense of belonging and community, and whereas today's libraries and their services extend far beyond the four walls of a building, and everyone is welcome to use their resources. Whereas for people lacking broadband at home, libraries provide access to computers and Wi-Fi, whereas libraries strive to develop and maintain programs and collections that are as diverse as the populations they serve and ensure equity of access for all. Whereas libraries offer opportunities for everyone to explore new worlds and become their best selves through access to technology, multimedia content, and educational programs. Whereas in times of crisis, libraries, librarians, and library workers play an invaluable role in supporting their communities both in person and virtually. Whereas to adapt to our changing world, libraries are expanding their resources and continuing to meet the needs of their patrons. Whereas libraries are cornerstones of democracy, promoting the free exchange of information and ideas for all. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Nathan Johnson, proclaim National Library Week to be April 4th through 10th, 2021. Dana, is there anything you want us to know about the work you're doing at the library?
I also want to thank you guys for all your support, and I know I've been updating you along the way, but I just want to say that I'm happy and proud that the library was able to continue services through 2020. We closed the library about mid-March, and the next week we started with curbside pickups, and from March to December we did 6,500 curbside pickups and checked out over 68,000 items. We've been letting people into the library since June for appointments, and we've had all kinds of activities throughout the year just trying to keep engaging with the community and the patrons. We did the around town scavenger hunt and all that, so very proud of the things that we've done and that we're continuing to do, and excited to keep serving our community.
Let's take an opportunity to give a round of applause to our staff and everyone else involved in these proclamations. Thank you. Now we'll move on to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, members of the commission, and public. A couple things I want to visit with you about and tell you about. My report's a little bit long. I apologize for that. We just have a lot going on. So if you'll settle in, I do need to ask you some feedback on some of the items. I'll let you know what those are. First, I'd like to give you and the community a little update on where we are with medical marijuana. We have not had any feedback at this point from the state of South Dakota. We are hearing some things, but we haven't gotten any concrete feedback. So our team, what we've called Team Cannabis, is continuing to work. We are putting together we've got some meat on the bones of an ordinance now, and we're just getting some of those things. Ross calls it, we're doing some surgery on that and kind of bantering back and forth. So by the time we have the ordinance to you, we believe it will be a good draft to work off of at your April 26th work session. So we will get that to you probably yet this week, probably after our meeting on Thursday. Get it to you. If you have a chance to take a look at it before our work session, that would be great. Now, please be aware that as we hear from the state what regulations and things that they're going to require of us, we may have to backtrack a little bit and make some changes. But just think, again, that we want to be on the front end of this, knowing that it still seems like July 1 is the date that we could be effective. So we want to keep moving as quickly forward as we can with our medical marijuana process and procedures and things like this. So we will be getting that ordinance to you. Also want to talk to you a little bit about our meetings. We have, as you know, had the hybrid form of meetings, well, since really the beginning. Many of us on city staff are close to our 2 weeks of, or at our 2 weeks of having had the vaccine. I don't know where all the commissioners are individually. However, I'd like to suggest that at our next meeting, which would be March 26th, no, it wouldn't. It would be April 26th. I'm a month behind. That we consider meeting all together in person. For those of you in the meeting room, you can see we have the ability to social distance with all 9 commissioners. But I want to talk to you about that, your comfort level and your thoughts. I think that there may be times when we still want to use the go-to format. However, I do believe that we have a lot better conversation when we're in the same room together, and I would like to encourage that. But again, this is your meeting and the public's meeting, so wanted to know how you felt about all coming back together for our next meeting. We would still do the YouTube live stream so people could watch the meeting, and we do have YouTube comments tonight. We would probably, still have the comments going, but not read them at every item. We can talk about that as well. But we would still live stream our meetings, of course, for folks to watch, both on YouTube, and then we'll have them on the PEG channel as well. So thoughts or comments or feelings about that?
This is Commissioner Maibaum. I can't wait. Looking forward to it.
I did hear from Commissioner Mosier. She couldn't be here this evening, but she was saying that she would like to see the commission back in the chambers.
I was just going to, sorry, go ahead.
Well, go ahead. This is Commissioner Weber. I'm at home. And I have just really appreciated the options of being able to do this over the internet as we, figure out how this all works and being able to maintain social distancing. I am fully vaccinated now, and I'm happy to come back into the chambers, and it'd be good to be together again.
And I was just going to state, I just think it is good if we can get everybody back in the room so that when we do have public appearances, they have the entire group to look at, right in the eye. I think it can make it a more meaningful conversation.
We will certainly continue with the masking policy in cooperation with the Yankton School District. And as I said before, the social distancing, and we'll make sanitizer and things available as well. If something should change, will change. We're just going to have to be used to doing that now in the world of COVID-19. So, and we'll make sure we communicate that. But it'll be nice to have everybody back here. I think the only real disappointed individual or entity is going to be George the cat, who seems to have makes regular appearances. And
He does want everybody to make sure that he's seen at least once in the evening, for sure.
he's
He'll
gonna,
be very disappointed.
Yes, he'll have to come for public appearances, but yeah, I think it's a good time, and I'll look forward to having all of you. If something changes with this current health situation, we'll alert you. Otherwise, we'll plan to meet together here on the 26th of April, and that will be at 6 o'clock for a work session. Then we'll roll into our to your regular commission meeting. So thank you for that. I will also, in the health board update, have a couple of things I'd like to visit with you about, not necessarily for you to take action on, but regarding our health board meetings themselves and our internal protocol with our organization and how, as we're responding to COVID-19. Tomorrow is Election Day. If you have not taken advantage of absentee voting and you're a registered voter in the city, between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., you can come to either City Hall or Fire Station 2, North Fire Station, to cast your vote. So please, I'm really making a plea to people that they come out and exercise their vote. The City Commission is the entity of government that most affects your life, whether people know it or not. So really, to have a voice and to be involved and be engaged, so important. So tell your neighbors and your friends, if you're a registered voter in the city of Yankton, please come and vote if you haven't voted already. Just crossing some things off my list. The Huther Family Aquatic Center is an exciting and nervous project for us at city staff right now. Exciting because we're getting close to opening, and nervous because we're getting close to opening. And the less nervous Todd gets, the more nervous I get. So I'm glad he's keeping me calm. We are not quite yet ready to announce our opening date, but we will be doing that very shortly. In the meantime, we're doing a lot of preparation. One of the things we're doing in preparation for that is we want to build a website. We know that this is different than just a regular city facility. This has a draw. This has a something we want to make a big presence with, and we want to certainly invest into that. So our team, which includes folks from IT and community development and parks and recreation and engineering, has gotten a couple of quotes for website design. Folks that specialize in, I guess I would say, attractions, have done city attractions before. And we would like to move forward with an entity called Robert Sharp and Associates. They're actually out of Rapid City. They have a more local photographer, a regional photographer. They're in the neighborhood of about $5,500. Completely falls within the budget of the project, but typically those types of things are something where we would bring forward the contract and have you all, vote yes or no. And we can do that next meeting if you'd like. We're just really a little bit under a time crunch, so unless somebody has a real, need, I would like to move forward with that, understanding that we have looked at a number of different vendors. This group, I believe, designed the Huron website for their aquatic center, and we liked the style of that, and have had some communication with what we're looking for. So if you guys are okay with that, we'll move forward with that entity. Otherwise, we'll wait and bring it to you with the different quotes and a memo, et cetera. One of the things that we would like to do is have this up before we open, and we're just getting into maybe 8 weeks away, maybe not even that. So maybe it's closer to 6. So any thoughts on that, or are you okay with us moving ahead? Okay, thank you very much. We have some special guests with us this evening. Under public appearances, we have Lauren Hansen from United Way. And as you remember, they come to us annually and give us a little update, so she will be doing that. We also have Joe and Jesse from Pathways, and they have some exciting, an update for us, but also some exciting news, so I won't steal the thunder there. Two other items that came up this week was or at least since our last meeting, was the Land and Water Conservation Grant schedule that is due, for applications due April 30th, as well as the second amendment sanctuary resolution. So just asking if there's interest beyond what I've already heard to put one of those, either or both of those items on the April 26th agenda. Okay.
This is Commissioner Mybom. I certainly appreciate both of those items being on the next agenda.
Did you have a specific project for the Land and Water Conservation Fund you wanted us to look at? And then, if so, I would ask the, commission, do you want us to work on that? We'd need to do some reprioritization, but we can certainly do that.
The thought that I had would be to evaluate where we're at with Sertoma Park, in particular, just with the most recent announcements that were made up in Sioux Falls and what Sanford is going to be expanding into with their facilities up there. So more in particular than Sertoma and its softball offerings. So I suppose the thought would be from the return on investment perspective, it's my understanding, not my expert analysis, but just from what I've learned with Sioux Falls' ideals in mind, and that is a small but important upgrade to a city's softball fields can actually mean quite a few more regional tournaments that can come to your city. And, we'd be talking then about several hundred adult families that would be coming potentially to a city like ours in the years ahead for adult softball tournaments, more than what we're currently eligible for, just given our limitations. So I know it's listed on the CIP that we do have some potential upgrades. I think it's probably fair to say that those items that are listed on the CIP are mostly just in wish list format, but this could be something that we could talk about perhaps in more depth, if anything, just simply from a return on investment perspective. I don't think we can go wrong in applying for this grant. However, it could also be an opportunity for us to invest in an area of our park system that could provide potentially a bigger return on investment in the long run.
So we do have a Land and Water Conservation Grant in the approval queue. That is for the West Side Park playground equipment. That is in the amount of, I believe, approximately $90,000. And that is gone now. It's been recommended to the National Park Service. So we think we have a very good chance of receiving funding for that grant. Our experience with the Land and Water Conservation Grant is that they don't award multiple grants to the same entity with, I guess in concurrent years or concurrent cycles. I don't think that that's a requirement of the grant, so I think it is possible. It's just not something that we've seen happen before. We did apply for the Aquatic Center a couple of times and the splash pad. I think we also applied for the West Side Park equipment more than once before we were successful. So if there's a specific improvement, we will apply. We need to put probably reshape some priorities. I don't know exactly, I don't think we can just say specifically, this dollar amount for softball field improvements. We would have to have a specific improvement. And then just realizing that typically we're not awarded the full grant amount. So if we were awarded, we need to be, I guess, prepared for budgeting and committing dollars to whatever project that we were awarded for. So if we applied for $100,000 and we got 50, we would need to, be aware that we would need to put in that additional 50 to make the project happen. So we're really looking at 2 years ahead budget cycle and not just the following year. So we're happy to apply for a grant like that. Just need to know then what exact project you want to look at, if it's, an upgrade to the concession stand, or what it exactly is that there's a number, as Commissioner Rybom mentioned, a number of things at Sertoma Park that could be upgraded. We have had a number of upgrades occur, but there are a number of things. And then we would also need to let a few of the other things. I would probably not put Todd in the situation to write that grant. I'd need his help, but I'd probably try to focus on that myself. Your commitment would just be a resolution authorizing that grant application, and then the dollar amount as well.
That's correct. And so it is fair to say we will have to put together a resolution at some point regardless over this upcoming grant opportunity. Is that right?
Yes, I mean, the resolution isn't, isn't difficult. We can use past resolutions. I'm not sure what specific item we need to, the commission would be interested in applying for from that list. And then, the work of the grant, I believe, is really getting the cost estimates, and, we have to get quotes from whatever, vendors that we might use to do that work, et cetera. So the resolution isn't a problem.
I have a question, please. What kind of a timeline would we be on with the grant? What is the deadline for applying?
I might need a little help on that, Todd, for the deadline. And then April 30th is the deadline, and the approval would not be until, I don't know, probably fall.
Normal grant cycle has usually been September deadlines, so this is different deadline.
Okay. Normally, the deadline's in September, or is September, but because it's,
And then you find out whether it's moving forward in late December, early January. So again, we're just
okay.
half a year earlier in the cycle than we have been in the past.
Okay, so if folks didn't hear Todd, typically we apply in September and find out in December or January if it makes to the next round. So this would be kind of a half a year later. So if it's April, we would suspect that we would hear sometime maybe late summer or early fall if it's accepted or authorized.
Is there an additional time to apply in the fall? Are there 2 times a year to apply?
I don't believe so. Not in the past, unless that, we learned something new from stimulus money or something like this. I guess that's a possibility.
So I always would like to see the things improved for our parks, but I would prefer to see the city staff devote their time to the Huther Center and getting activities rolled out for the summer for the kids in the middle of a pandemic versus, and maybe doing this next year, then putting our energy towards something in addition to these big projects we've got coming up with that deadline being April 30th. I think it puts a burden on the staff that we probably could do later in a different timeline.
I agree with
would
what,
agree with, yeah, Sorry, this is Commissioner.
Go ahead, Amy.
On that, we have a major opening of this aquatics facility, and I know we're trying to get city programs rolling, and we only have so much staff and so many hours. So we can't drop the ball here going into the summer with the aquatics facility. So I would prefer to wait.
And given the history of success our staff has had in obtaining these grants, I don't see why we would get involved in micromanaging them and telling them how they should be getting engaged with the process. I think they've demonstrated their professionalism there, and I would expect they would continue to do that. So I think we can, this may be a subject that comes up during our summer budgeting session when we're figuring out our priorities for the park system in future years.
This is Commissioner Mybom. If maybe City Manager Leone or if Todd could just to clarify. So if the grant application does not go through, if we don't put a resolution in place in between now and the end of April, is it or is it not like we're missing a grant opportunity cycle for our park system?
I think that the history of the grant has been that we've never known any entity to be awarded while they currently have a grant pending with land water conservation. I'm not aware of that. So it's possible that we're missing an opportunity, but improbable that we'd be awarded that opportunity. So I guess yes and no is the answer to that. All the grants that we work with kind of have a little bit of a narrative with them in terms of how much money there is and how they try to spread out that money throughout the state and how many, it makes a difference as to how many entities apply. We've been really fortunate with land water conservation grant. I don't think it would be likely we would get get approval, but it's, I don't want to. Somebody once told me, never say never, never's a long time. So, it's certainly, anything's possible. We certainly might. And, I don't want to pass up something that looks like free money or the potential for free money. However, a lot of times when we do work towards grants, we're not, they ends up costing us more than we think if we don't get the full amount, or we don't, I guess the trail project would be example of a federal grant that got, as time went on, the project grew because of all the requirements necessary. But, that's the roll of the dice that we have every single time. So we do a project. So I guess it depends upon how you look at it, whether or not that we're missing an opportunity.
Amy, I think we have our answer on that topic, so let's move on. We have a long agenda.
I don't know if anyone wanted to comment on the Second Amendment sanctuary resolution. I heard Commissioner Mybom say he was interested in putting that on the agenda as well. Make sure I'm following your direction.
I'm not sure why it's necessary that we place that on the agenda. The Constitution seems to be pretty clear about the Second Amendment.
I agree. This is Commissioner Sard, I agree with Commissioner Weber.
Okay, thank you. Unless there's other questions for me, Mayor Johnson, I will let you move on to your business.
Any more questions for the city manager? All right, next we have public appearances, and this is a time when members of the audience can address the commission about items not on tonight's agenda. We do have a couple scheduled public appearances, and first up is Lauren Hansen with United Way. So Lauren, if you could step to the podium. Good evening.
United Way's Board of Directors evaluated our community investment process by conducting a community needs assessment, working alongside multiple leaders, donors, service providers, and clients. During this process, United Way's investment procedures, our funding priorities, and our community impact goals were updated to better reflect current needs and the importance of investing into measurable programming that drive both short-term and long-term community success. United Way's updated community impact grant funding process and our new community impact goals are included within your packet this evening. In 2020, over $420,000 was distributed to our local funded partners through United Way's Community Impact Fund, with the City of Yankton contributing $39,325. Within your packet, you will also find 2020's Community Impact Fund distribution report, sharing those exact allocation amounts to local nonprofit agencies this year. For a more in-depth report on your investment, I have also shared with you our most recent 2020 Community Impact Report. Please note that the City of Yankton is listed as a Titanium Giving Leadership Donor. Collective impact statistics from our funded partners and internal United Way programming successes are also shared within the report. Now, United Way programming facilitated by United Way staff include the following: the Clothing Closet, Big Friend, Little Friend, the Retired and Senior Volunteer Program, Stuff the Bus School Supply Store, Toys for Kids, Adopt a Family, Holiday Bed Program, Imagination Library, the Big Red Bookshelf, Character Playbook, My Free Taxes, and the Delta Dental Mobile Program. Now, 2020 United Way initiatives are also outlined, which include the Yankton School District Face Mask for Students project, the United Way Born Learning Trail at Westside Park, thanks to our wonderful partners at the City of Yankton Parks and Recreation Department and Yankton Area Arts. We've also outlined the emergency food box distribution, which was in partnership with Yankton County Office of Emergency Management in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. For additional information, United Way's most recent 990 and audit can be obtained on our website, yanktonunitedway.org, which shows 87% of expenses going directly towards community programming and a very low 7% management and 6% fundraising expense. Now, per our annual allocation process, 2021 awards have been determined and are currently being allocated as listed on your 2021 year-to-date Community Impact Fund distribution report, which was in your packet. As you can see, unfortunately, within that last report, our 2021 community impact budget was unable to fully fund or increase investments into our partner agencies. Unfortunately, due to the decrease in the amount raised during our community campaign the last 12 months, a 20% decrease in overall funding was deemed necessary. But 2022 is looking brighter. Our community impact applications for 2022 will be available on our website in June, open to any 501c3 health and human service organization, again, focusing on education, financial stability, and health. 22 grant applications are due to the United Way office August 1st, with our annual allocations retreat scheduled for this fall. Again, I would like to thank you, the City of Yankton, for your partnership, leadership, and continued support this last year. 2020 was a year of adaptation, but really strong community partnerships and dedicated people, volunteers, and some really innovative solutions to some of our community's most critical needs. And I'm very proud of the work that was done. At United Way, we were able to witness firsthand Yankton's collective strength in addressing these challenges, and that we as a community are definitely stronger when we work together as a united front. Thank you all so much for your time, and I'd be very happy to answer any questions that you may have for me.
Any questions for Lauren? Lauren, I would be curious as to, during a really rough year like we just did, are there any real opportunities for improvement in our community that you've discovered through that? I know in a lot of places this has exposed weaknesses in our society, and so.
I think we've definitely realized the importance of our Community Impact Fund and the generosity of our community, and how agencies heavily rely on our generous community, not only for grant funding, but individual donations. We've seen some of our smaller agencies financially struggle. Others are doing okay with emergency funds that United Way had available, or the state or federal level. So it's a very different picture for every different agency, based on leadership or just capacity of their board and volunteers. So we're kind of seeing long-term effects with some agencies. I know I've been talking to Jesse and Pathways about a lot of different emerging needs that are coming up. One thing that I think we're on the cusp of moving forward with are some really impressive collaboration efforts utilizing updated technology, and that we've been presented with opportunities from regional partners to collaborate with referrals and communication in a new, innovative way. And it's really important that we seize those opportunities when they're available to us and introduce change to our partners as a good thing. I think this year really showed a lot of us that change is okay, and sometimes it presents better opportunities and better ways to do things. So we've seen a lot, good and bad, but I think the future is it's optimistic, and even though that 20% decrease in funding was painful to do, the last decade at United Way, we've been blessed with 6, 12, 15% increases in our community campaign and our investment process. And this was the first time in 12 years we've had to award less dollars. We were conservative, but we were pretty much right on with our forecast, with the way that the drive ended up. But again, our partnership with the city is crucial in that, and we'd really appreciate any consideration that the city would take to looking into any increase in their investment into that, because again, it is critical that these health and human service agencies continue to serve people, and we've witnessed that especially in 2020. So, thank you again.
Yep, thank you for your part in helping all of us get through this last year. You played a crucial role. Thank you. And next, we have Jesse Bailey and Joe Tilkey from Pathways Homeless, or Shelter for the Homeless, I should say. And I believe we do have some exciting news to share tonight.
So, good evening, and thank you for having us here tonight. For those listening, Jesse Bailey, Executive Director with Pathway Shelter for the Homeless. I believe all the commissioners know the project that was on the table, correct? Pathways has been in our building since 2015, and it's been a wild ride of ups and downs and learning how to serve a greater population. And when we thought that the motel would be the answer, we found that we had a waiting list 2 years into that. So right now, our basement expansion is underway, and it's just amazing to see the progress that is making. And as we've been talking about, 2020 was an interesting time to figure out how to serve a vulnerable population safely and trying to keep folks healthy, especially when we're all cramped in a small facility. So the basement expansion is great, but beyond that, this community development block grant that the city agreed to be the fiscal sponsor for. So first, thank you for even agreeing to be a part of that project in hopes that we would get it. That will allow us to to grow a campus and to kind of spread out a little bit, not be on top of each other, staff and clients included. So last Thursday, I believe it was, I received a call from Brad Beast with the city, who kind of put this idea on the table, and he just nonchalantly said, "Hey, did you know that you were awarded this project?" So the funding was approved in the amount of $269,000, just over $269,000, which for Pathways, if you know what our budget isn't much higher than $269,000. So that's a huge win for Pathways and for the city. So just to put that into perspective, I mean, I guess the clients will probably, if they were here, they would thank you the most because they're the ones that are going to benefit from this. And in turn, our city will hopefully be a more stable place because of that. So I'm not going to go into statistics or anything. I just wanted to, on behalf of Pathways and our organization, say thank you to the city for that. And I'm so excited to see what our little section of 4th Street and Pearl is going to look like about a year from now. So I'm happy to answer any questions as well, but I think we'll invite Joseph up here to give his update on our ESG programs.
The letter that was sent ahead, signature was received that was needed, and I appreciate that. This has been something I've been meaning to do for a while now. It's just an annual tradition of a public appearance, and what that does is it demonstrates to our supporters an openness, which we want to follow through with on communication and cooperation. It seems a little silly on the heels of the CDBG cooperation there, but that won't always be the case. Commission membership changes, and as I said, this is an effort for us to be transparent in our search for funding through South Dakota Housing and HUD grants, and that we want to be open to communication and criticism. And if this appearance that I make every year while I go after this funding becomes a little rote, I'll consider us lucky, because there are plenty of shelters that have a much more contentious relationship with their community. And of course, that's a priority of ours, is to make sure that ever happens. So thank you.
Are there any questions for Jesse or Joe? Again, I just think it's incredible news that you'll be able to expand your services. As you mentioned, we found out, we've known there's an incredible need, but I think during this last year, it exposed that even more. So to have that available in our community, Yankton is a real beacon for sheltering those in need in our community, I think, in this state. So I applaud you for that. And Brad, I think you're watching YouTube tonight. Thank you for your part in that as well. I don't know if he hears me or not, but are there any other members of the audience who would like to address the commission about something not on tonight's agenda? Okay. Then we're going to move on to the consent items. Number 1 is setting a date of April, and thank you, everyone. Number one is setting a date of April 26th at 6 PM in this room for our next work session. And as the city manager mentioned earlier, we'll likely be discussing medical marijuana again. Number two is consideration of memorandum 21-54 recommending approval of the applications from Yankton Ribfest Committee for a transient merchant license for June 12th, as well as a special events dance license for June 12th. Number three is establishing noon on Friday, April 16th as the time and date of a notice to call a special city commission meeting to canvass the election returns of the city election to be held tomorrow, April 13th. Number four is establishing April 26th as the date for the public hearing on the transfer of ownership of a retail on-off sale malt beverage and South Dakota farm wine license for July 1st to June 30th. So it'd be July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021 from Cheers Bar and Grill to Hayes Enterprises LLC, and that is located at 310 Walnut Street. And finally, number five is establishing April 26th as the date for the public hearing on the request for a special events malt beverage on-off sale license for August 6th from the Utica Hall. And they will be having at an event at the 4-H Fairgrounds at 901 Whiting Drive. What is your pleasure?
Benson, so moved.
Schramm, second.
We've got a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on any of these items? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on any of these items? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. And any abstaining? Thank you. Moving on to old business, we'll start with the city manager's health board update.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, members of the commission. Want to talk to you just briefly about a couple of things. The first will be the metrics that I emailed you today, and we updated today. We have seen a little bit of a decrease in our case numbers with COVID-19, which is good. You'll see that in the upper right-hand corner from last week. Not as low, of course, as we have been, and we've never met that active case goal that we established of under 25 yet, let's say. So just something to be aware of there. We did have an increase in hospitalizations. There are 2 individuals currently hospitalized at Avera Sacred Heart with COVID-19, and we were informed today at our task force meeting, our COVID-19 task force meeting, that we did experience a death due to COVID-19 in the county over the course of the last week or so. So just for the public's and commission's knowledge on that. If you look at our vaccinations, you see that we continue to do very well with our vaccinations. I believe we're at a 36% of population with both doses, and I think that's a 16% with at least 1 dose. And we know that that number is low. That does not include the federal program yet. We do not have that tracked yet, and we're guessing about 10% low. So now vaccinations are open pretty much to anyone who is wanting a vaccine. Wants the COVID-19 vaccine, which is and is of age to receive it. So that's awesome. We think we're going to continue to see that number raised. So we consider that goal achieved. So while we initially established this metric for consideration with the mask ordinance, we've continued to keep updating this metric and bringing you updates and talking about it in our weekly health board meetings. We decided today we do want to continue to monitor this metric and give it to you on a weekly basis and visit with you about it on occasion. However, our health board meetings have become very short and we haven't had much new information to discuss. So the members of the health board have considered if meeting just on an as-needed basis was okay with the city commission. Or if something were to change, dramatically, then calling a meeting and notifying the public that we've called a meeting, et cetera. We haven't had any recommendations for you for some time, and you know, we don't have any necessarily specific for you tonight other than just the conversation about, are you okay if we back off of the weekly meetings and go to an as-needed basis?
I would say I would be completely fine with that, just because I don't think we should have meetings to have meetings. But do we want to do it as just as needed, or should there be at least a monthly?
That was an option that was discussed as well. We could also go to a monthly meeting. We can do that as well if the commission prefers. We would schedule it, you know, prior to probably the same Monday as a commission meeting, so we had up-to-date information.
This is Commissioner Minor. I would like to see us continue to meet monthly. I feel like if we say as needed, then we have to establish the metrics for what that means. How do we know if we need a meeting? So as the variants are moving around and as our vaccines are increasing, let's just be responsible and stay on top of it and talk every month. And if the meetings are short, then hopefully we can phase them out over the summer.
Any other comments on that? Otherwise, there's a couple other things with the health board I'd like to mention. We'll plan on meeting monthly. Also want to talk about the composition of the health board. As you folks might remember, city manager and mayor and the appointee from the city manager. So we'll have an election tomorrow. We'll have a commission seated, and then amongst the commissioners, you'll select your mayor. So that position could change, just letting the public and you know that if that changes for you, that will be a new health board member as well. So just wanted to let you know that. I'm going to talk with the department heads tomorrow after I visit with you here this evening, and then communicate with the rest of city staff. As I've said, many of us have been fortunate because we were considered the critical employees that we were able to receive vaccine, and some of us were able to receive vaccine even more than a month or so ago. So many are past their 2 weeks of their second dose of the vaccine. I would like to begin dialing back a lot of our protocol, you know, so that we're able to get together. We've been not doing a lot of our meetings in person. We haven't been doing many meetings outside of City Hall. We've only been doing very essential travel. So what I'd like to propose in general is that we start moving back a little bit with that, still using masking and social distancing, you know, in our common spaces. But if I go down to, you know, visit Chief Harris, I know he's been vaccinated and passed his 2 weeks of second dose, and I'm past my 2 weeks of second dose. We talk about it, and we want to take our masks off while we're in his office and we're not interacting with other folks, feeling comfortable to do that. Same with folks that are in vehicles together. We think that that's prudent. We know that that could change, and that dial we've been spinning might have to turn back the other way if things go differently for us. But we're been talking with a committee of employees. We've been talking with individual departments, and there's a lot of comfort in moving that towards that direction. We would like to, you know, continue with masking, like I said, and the social distancing in public spaces, and up until we're reached that point where all our employees have had either access or are fully vaccinated. So thoughts or comments on that? I know that's something that, you know, we've set internally, but we certainly want to make sure, because it is a public space, that the commission's aware of plans and has a chance for some feedback.
Being in human resources and employer here in the area, this is something we continue to look at regularly, and you understand the vulnerability of your population best. I be interested to hear what the rest of the feedback of the commissioners is, but I think you've got to do what's best for your group. And there is a lot of leniency on you being able to say, if the population is vaccinated, they're allowed to go without masks, they're allowed to do certain things. But if they are not, then they have to abide by the rules. And that's, it's weird because I've never seen those types of things where you can, I don't like this word, but almost discriminate against a group. But the Department of Labor is allowing a lot of those things to take place because you know your population best, you know the vulnerability of your group, and I think you've got to make the decisions that's best for the employees.
We will certainly always allow people to wear masks. You know, I think the world has changed a little bit. Now, even non-COVID, I think sometimes folks with illness might choose to wear a mask and social distance or, you know, work from home an extra day if they have the sniffles or something of that nature. So, well, we'll provide masks. My intention, too, is to visit with the department heads about if someone from the public requests that you wear a mask, we will have them available always to do that. You know, when we have to go into people's homes, which occasionally our water department or our police department or sometimes other departments need to do, we will be respectful of the property owner and, you know, unless it's an emergency situation, do that. We'll make masks available for the public and always probably have hand sanitizer around. That'll just probably always be something that we provide. And we know that we might have to turn on a dime as well if something unexpected comes forward. But I think starting to dip our toes in the water is a good idea. Many of us, you know, have discussed that, you know, we think that with the CDC's support of fully vaccinated people not wearing masks, that we should get back to some of that as well. So nothing for the commission to vote on, Mayor, just information and feedback, and I thank you for that.
Thank you. There's no more discussion on that subject. We'll move on. Last call. Okay. Number 2 under old business is consideration of memorandum 21-55 regarding the request for a special events on sale liquor license for June 12th from Rock and Rumble, doing business as Yankton Rib Fest. And this will be for 3rd Street near the intersections of Cedar and Walnut Streets. What is your pleasure?
Weber moves.
Brunick, second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Brad, any relevant YouTube comments? Did I hear Brad faintly there?
You did. There are no comments at this time.
Great. Al, roll call, please.
Okay, and this is roll call on old business item 3-2. Sarda.
Sarda, aye.
Sarda's aye. Mybom.
Mybom is aye.
Mybom is aye. Minor.
Minor, aye.
Minor is aye. Schramm.
Schramm, aye.
Schramm is aye. Weber.
Weber is aye.
Weber is aye. Benson.
Benson, aye.
Benson is aye. Brunick.
Brunick, aye.
Brunick is aye. Mayor Johnson.
Johnson, aye.
Mayor Johnson is aye. Old business item 3-2 passes 8-0.
Moving on to new business. Number 1 is consideration of memorandum 21-64 and resolution 21-29 regarding a recommendation for a vehicle purchase from the state bid list for the water department. This would be a 2021 Ford F-250 at a price of $29,135. What is your pleasure?
Brunick, so moved.
I believe I would motion in a second there. Okay. Any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Brad, any YouTube comments?
There are no comments at this time.
Thank you. Al, roll call, please.
This is roll call on new business item 4-1. Mybom.
Mybom is aye.
Mybom is aye. Minor.
Minor, aye.
Minor is aye. Schramm.
Schramm, aye.
Schramm is aye. Weber.
Weber is aye.
Weber is aye. Benson.
Benson, I.
Benson is aye. Brunig.
Brunick, aye.
Brunig is aye. Sarda.
Sarda, aye.
Sarda is aye. Mayor Johnson.
Johnson, aye.
Mayor Johnson is aye. New business item 4-1 passes 8-0.
Number 2 under new business is consideration of memorandum 21-65 and resolution 21-30 regarding a recommendation for a vehicle purchase from the state bid list for the wastewater department. And this would be a 2021 Dodge 1500 at a price of $22,967. What is your pleasure?
Minor moves.
Weber seconds.
We've got a motion and a second. Any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Brad, any YouTube comments?
No comments at this time.
Thank you. Al, roll call, please.
This is roll call on new business item 4-2. Minor.
Minor, aye.
Minor is aye. Schramm.
Schramm, aye.
Schramm is aye. Weber.
Weber is aye.
Weber is aye. Benson.
Benson, I.
Benson is aye. Brunig.
Brunick, aye.
Brunig is aye. Sarda.
Sarda, aye.
Sarda is aye. Mybom.
Mybom is aye.
Mybom is aye. Mayor Johnson.
Johnson, aye.
Mayor Johnson is aye. New business item 4-2 passes 8-0.
Number 3 under new business, consideration of memorandum 21-58 regarding a sidewalk cafe license for 100 East 3rd Street, which is the Boathouse. What is your pleasure?
Benson, so moved.
Brunick, second.
Weber seconds.
We've got a motion and a second. Al, did you figure out who your second was?
I picked one.
Okay. Is there any commission discussion on this item?
This is Commissioner Mybom. I guess I'd have a question for Brad, if he put this together. Looking at the drawings, looks like there's going to be a pretty significant part of this sidewalk cafe setup that's going to be for cornhole. We play the game all the time in my family. It's pretty, you got to have the boards pretty far apart. I'm just curious if there was any discussion about that component to the sidewalk cafe, if that is something that maybe we should scrutinize, simply because it does take up some extra space. It's not it's certainly for entertainment, and I really don't have an opinion one way or the other, but I don't know necessarily if that was part of the spirit of the sidewalk cafe permits that we were issuing at the outset.
Dave's going to answer that question for you, Commissioner Mybom.
Yeah, so we had the same thoughts, and in looking at the ordinance, didn't see anything that would restrict that sort of activity. And then we also have the example of our Walnut Street project that we did last year. That's one of the images that we presented on 3rd and Walnut, going south on Walnut Street there, was the potential for things like that to occur with special permission in right-of-way locations, as long as there was enough room for the curb zone and the pedestrian zone. So didn't see that as a red flag, but we can certainly have that discussion if you want.
Commissioner Minor here. If I look at the sketch correctly, there's a fence that separates the cornhole. The cornhole's on a grassy area, right? And then the pedestrian walkway is on the other side of the fence. Is the fence big enough to separate, keep anybody from getting hit by a cornhole bag?
I don't know if I know the official specifications for cornhole bag clearance, but yeah, most of the people at the Sidewalk Cafe want to create, and we require that they create that separation with a fence like that. You know, again, specific to that game and that location. we can sure talk about it. The commission has the ability or authority to approve the permit and say that that can't be allowed. But again, it was in an image over on Walnut Street where there was no fencing or separation in public space. So we just assumed that it fit with the project since there is a fairly big piece of right of way there also.
I think we can just see how it goes, and if there's an issue, we can discuss that later. I just applaud them for doing another sidewalk cafe license and bringing more life to the outdoors in our downtown. I think that's great.
And reasonably speaking,
And
they're throwing these beanbags underhand, not throwing axes like they are inside.
And I would just jump in and say, I think it looks like a really fun idea. It's worth giving a try.
Thank you to staff for allowing some creativity on that and seeing how it works out. Any more commission discussion? Does anyone in the audience want to address the commission on this item? And Brad, any YouTube comments we should be aware of?
No comments at this time.
Thank you. Al, roll call, please.
And this is roll call on new business item 4-3. Schramm.
Schramm, aye.
Schramm is aye. Weber.
Weber is aye.
Weber is aye. Benson.
Benson, I.
Benson is aye. Brunick.
Brunick, aye.
Brunick is aye. Sarda.
Sarda, aye.
Sarda is aye. Mybom.
Mybom is aye.
Mybom is aye. Minor.
Minor, aye.
Minor is aye. Mayor Johnson.
Johnson, aye.
Mayor Johnson is aye. New business item 4-3 passes 8-0.
Number 4 under new business is consideration of memorandum 21-60 recommending approval of the purchase of a snow blower for the Chan Gurney Municipal Airport, and resolution 21-27 declaring a 1998 snow blower surplus. The new snow blower will be at a price of $118,100. What is your pleasure?
Weber moves.
Sarda, second.
Got a motion and a second. Any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Brad, any YouTube comments?
No comments.
Thank you. Al, roll call, please.
This is roll call on new business item 4-4. Weber.
Weber votes aye.
Weber is aye. Benson.
Benson, I.
Benson is aye. Brunick.
Brunick, aye.
Brunick is aye. Sarda.
Sarda, aye.
Sarda is aye. Mybom.
Mybom is aye.
Mybom is aye. Minor.
Minor, aye.
Minor is aye. Schramm.
Schramm, aye.
Schramm is aye. Mayor Johnson.
Johnson, aye.
Mayor Johnson is aye. New business item 4-4 passes 8-0. I'm sorry.
Number 5 under new business is consideration of memorandum 21-63 regarding resolution 21-28. This would be to surplus a 2020 police Ford Explorer. What is your pleasure?
Brunick, so moved.
Minor,
We have a motion and a second. Chief Harris, maybe if the public's watching, they may be curious as to why we're surplusing a 2020 vehicle. And it sounds like we have very good reason to do this.
We did have, is one of the vehicles that we purchased recently is what you would actually call a lemon. It's been down in the shop more than it's been up, and Ford's recalling it now. We have an agreement with them to take it back. So we're going to actually get rid of that vehicle so we don't continue to waste more time and money with that vehicle.
Any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Brad, any YouTube comments?
No YouTube comments.
Thank you. Al, roll call, please.
And this is roll call on new business item 4-5. Benson.
Benson, I.
Benson is aye. Brunick.
Brunick, aye.
Brunick is aye. Sarda.
Sarda, aye.
Sarda is aye. Mybom.
Mybom is aye.
Mybom is aye. Minor.
minor, aye.
Minor is aye. Schramm.
Schramm, aye.
Schramm is aye. Weber.
Weber is aye.
Weber is aye. Mayor Johnson.
Johnson, aye.
Mayor Johnson is aye. New business item 4-5 passes 8-0.
Number 6 under new business is consideration of memorandum 21-69 regarding a vehicle purchase from the state bid list for the Yankton Police Department. This would be for 2 2021 Ford Interceptor SUVs, and this would be for a total price of $84,383.72. What is your pleasure?
Weber moves.
Schramm, second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Brad, any YouTube comments?
No comments at this time.
Thank you. Al, roll call, please.
This is roll call on new business item 4-6. Brunig.
Brunick, aye.
Brunig is aye. Sarda? Sarda is aye. Mybom?
Mybom is aye.
Mybom is aye. Minor?
Minor, aye.
Minor is aye. Schramm?
Schramm, aye.
Schramm is aye. Weber?
Weber is aye.
Weber is aye. Benson?
Benson, I.
Benson is aye. Mayor Johnson?
Johnson, aye.
Mayor Johnson is aye. New business item 4-6 passes 8-0.
Number 7 under new business is consideration of memorandum 21-61 regarding the 8th Amendment to the Joint Powers Solid Waste Agreement. What is your pleasure?
Schramm, so moved.
Weber moves.
We've got a motion and a second. Adam, did you want to, or Amy,
Sure, I could talk about
if you
that,
could
Mayor.
describe for the public what we're doing here? Thank
Sure,
you.
so this is an amendment. It's actually the 8th Amendment to the revised Joint Powers Solid Waste Agreement. We need to have each entity involved in the Joint Powers Agreement approve any amendment that's made. And when one of the entities involved receives a SRF loan or applies for SRF loan and receives it, we need to accept that we're going to, borrow these funds. So the DRNR approved a $500,000 grant and an SRF loan of 1.9 million, actually 1,996,000 for cell 6 and development of cell 6 and closure of cells 2 and 3, contingent upon all of these entities approving this. So as you folks will remember, if you were around when we did our scale project, we went through the same process with all the various entities. So this is Vermillion's request. So if this is authorized tonight by the City Commission, we will visit with Yankton County then on April 20th, I believe, and that would allow Joint Powers to move forward.
Any commission discussion or questions about this? All right, would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Brad, any YouTube comments?
No comments on YouTube.
Al, roll call, please.
And this is roll call on new business item 4-7. Sarda?
Sarda, aye.
Sarda is aye. Mybom?
Mybom is aye.
Mybom is aye. Minor?
Minor, aye.
Minor is aye. Schramm?
Schramm, aye.
Schramm is aye. Weber?
Weber is aye.
Weber is aye. Benson?
Benson, I.
Benson is aye. Brunig?
Brunick, aye.
Brunig is aye. Mayor Johnson?
Johnson, aye.
Mayor Johnson is aye. New business item 4-7 passes 8-0.
Number 8 under new business is consideration of memorandum 21-66 regarding an addendum to the development agreement for Phase 2 of Westbrook Estates. What is your pleasure?
Minor moves memorandum.
Benson, second.
We've got a motion and a second. Mr. Mingo, could you give us an overview of what's being considered here?
Sure. There's a really long backstory, which I'll try to abbreviate as much as possible and get right to the proposed addendum. The backstory is Westbrook Estates, west of West City Limits Road, as you know, was created in partnership with Yankton Area Progressive Growth and a couple of private developers. The goal in the single family housing component of the project was to try and find a price point that would suit a two working household family, and working with lenders at the time, trying to come up with a number that would work, and also working with local developers to see if they would be willing to build units at that price point. We came up with the number, YPG and the developer, and we approached local developers, and there was not any interest really from local developers to construct homes at that price point. So they were happy in the marketplace that they were working in, which was a little bit higher than the price point we were hoping for the workforce housing. So at that point in time, contacts were made, and we were fortunate, and YPG was fortunate to find Kelly Nielsen, who's here and can also comment, who at the volume that he produces units is able to work on a little different margin. And we looked at 5+ years rates of inflation and came up with a price point, and then allowed for a 3% rate of inflation every year to be added to that price point, just to kind of keep him in the market, but yet also make sure to cap the costs in the units. Well, as most of you know, 2020 kind of really made that math not work. And so we've proposed an addendum, and rather than coming up with a percentage and having to review it annually or something like that, Mr. Nielsen proposed, and we discussed back and forth, working through a benchmark that's widely accepted, and that would be the first-time home buyers mortgage rate cap. Well, that number is still pretty big, so we discussed what level below that might fit closer to where we were if we kept using the 3%, but yet also represent materials costs. So that discussion landed us on $20,000 under the first-time home buyers price point, which puts him somewhere still below what materials or inflation costs have been. So, but he's willing to do that, and the good news is that will keep new homes being built in Yankton at a pretty brisk pace, rather than have him take his workforce elsewhere to build homes where there's a little better margin. But what the addendum does is three things, basically. It maintains the original purpose of the agreement, very important, by holding the developer to a specific maximum price point on the identified lots in the subdivision. It develops a more representative method of determining the price point that adjusts itself annually based on the widely accepted benchmark of the first-time home buyers rate. And it makes sure the adjusted price point also motivates the developer to continue construction in Yankton by keeping that number fair for him also. So I think we kind of have a win-win situation here. Yeah, the number is higher than anybody would like to see it, but it kind of is what it is. And based on what materials prices have done, it seems like we've come up with a fair solution. So the city attorney prepared the addendum. Mr. Nielsen's already signed it, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any commission questions or discussion on this item? As Dave alluded, Mr. Nielsen is in the room with us as well.
Dave, this is Commissioner Maibaum. I'd just like to go back to the first line in the memorandum. If you could maybe qualify that a little bit more for me. I know this kind of goes back to the history of this agreement, but that there's a stipulated maximum sale price for homes in a majority of the development. Can you talk a little bit about that majority of the development, and then perhaps how the implications, I suppose, could play out potentially, even given the addendum that we're talking about here tonight?
That's a really good question, and I appreciate the opportunity to further explain a little bit about the geography of the subdivision. One of the things that the city was struggling with when the development phase 2 came forward was how were we going to pay for what needed to be done in 23rd Street, which, if you think about the site, is significantly detached from where a majority of this phase is taking place. Well, the reason we needed to get 23rd Street in is there's some pretty expensive pieces of infrastructure in there. Plus, it'll create the paved loop to the south, and it's a collector of the communities that the city would be largely responsible for paying for. So in negotiations in 2017 with the developer, we identified 20 lots on the far north end of it. In other words, kind of more along the high bank of the creek, next to that 6-acre open space piece of property the city has, where there would not be a price cap on those lots. That does two things. One is it keeps the developer busy out there. If his market slows down on the price cap lots, he can keep building houses at market rate. And it also, the increment from the tax increment district on those 20 lots comes straight to the city and stays with the city to pay for the 23rd Street offsite costs that we would have. So figured out a way to leverage some of the tax increment district to pay for something that otherwise would have been really difficult to find a way to pay for.
Excellent. Thank you, Dave. And whether or not Mr. Nielsen has any questions that he has to answer, just from my perspective, certainly been appreciative of his partnership with the city through this.
Any more commission discussion? I would just add that I'm appreciative of the creativity that went into figuring out a solution to this, because we recognize this is something that could not have been predicted. And so to make it feasible for Kelly to continue doing work here, I'm glad we were able to come to an agreement. Is there anything you wanted to add about how things are going?
Challenges of cost. It's been a fun year for all of us, and unfortunately we don't see a tick down. Our material, just to give you a ballpark of what we're facing, is on a average 1,200 square foot house. We're getting about roughly $1.70 on average the last 4 months. Each month it's going up, so roughly $2,000 a home every month is our cost, and it's taken us 6 to 8 months to build them. And that's when I reached out to Dave. I don't know if there's an end in sight on our side, and try to come up with a creative way to still keep putting product in Yankton as well as other communities, obviously. But so yeah, just a quick update on the development since we took over the second phase from YPG. We built and sold 24 homes out there since 2017. We got 6 specs currently in the ground, that we're trying to finish up and get on the market available. And then we also sold off 7 lots to another contractor. So I think all in all, the program's working. I mean, it'd maybe be a little faster if some of these things weren't hitting us as like they are, but yeah, so I appreciate the opportunity to work with you guys in the project, and I appreciate you considering this raise to their standard. And I feel like it's about as reasonable as we can get it. It's a third party that's establishing a base for us to work off of, so. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're all well aware of how badly housing is needed in the community, so to keep this moving forward is an asset to all of us. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to address the commission on this item? Brad, any YouTube comments?
No comments at this time.
Thank you. Al, roll call, please.
And this is roll call on new business item 4-8. Mybom.
Mybom is aye.
Mybom is aye. Minor.
Minor, aye.
Minor is aye. Schramm.
Schramm, aye.
Schramm is aye. Weber.
Weber is aye.
Weber is aye. Benson.
Benson, I.
Benson is aye. Brunig.
Brunig, aye.
Brunig is aye. Sarda.
Sarda, aye.
Sarda is aye. Mayor Johnson.
Johnson, aye.
Mayor Johnson is aye. New business item 4-8 passes 8-0.
Kelly, thanks again for your patience. It took us a while to get to you tonight. Yep. Number 9 under new business is consideration of memorandum 21-67 regarding a change order to the Heather Family Aquatic Center, and this would be in the amount of $14,833 and would be an increase. What is your pleasure?
Schramm, so moved.
Minor, second. Minor, second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Al, roll call, please.
We waiting for YouTube comments at all?
Sorry,
Or
Brad,
checking?
any YouTube comments?
There are none.
Great. Proceed, Al.
Okay, and this is roll call on new business item 4-9. Minor.
Minor, aye.
Minor is aye. Schramm.
Schramm, aye.
Schramm is aye. Weber.
Weber is aye.
Weber is aye. Benson.
Benson, I.
Benson is aye. Brunick.
Brunick, aye.
Brunick is aye. Sarda.
Sarda, aye.
Sarda is aye. Mybom.
Mybom is aye.
Mybom is aye. Mayor Johnson.
Johnson, aye.
Mayor Johnson is aye. New business item 4-9 passes 8-0.
Number 10 under new business is consideration of memorandum 21-56 and resolution 21-25 regarding a request by Yankton Ribfest for a special events parking ordinance, number 933, to be in place during the Ribfest on June 12th, as well as a suspension of our alcohol consumption laws. What is your pleasure?
Brunick, so moved.
Benson, second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Brad, any YouTube comments?
No comments at this time.
Thank you. Al, roll call, please.
And this is roll call on new business item 4-10. Schramm.
Schramm, aye.
Schramm is aye. Weber.
Weber is aye.
Weber is aye. Benson.
Benson, I.
Benson is aye. Brunick.
Brunick, aye.
Brunick is aye. Sarda.
Sarda, aye.
Sarda is aye. Mybom.
Mybom is aye.
Mybom is aye. Minor.
Minor, aye.
Minor is aye. Mayor Johnson.
Johnson, aye.
Mayor Johnson is aye. New business item 4-10 passes 8-0.
Number 11 under new business is consideration of memorandum 21-57 and resolution 21-26 regarding a request by the Meridian District for a special events parking ordinance, number 933, to be in place during the farmers market each Saturday from May 1st through October 30th. What is your pleasure?
Weber moves.
Brunick, second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Brad, any YouTube comments?
No comments at this time.
Thank you. Al, roll call, please.
This is roll call on new business item 4-11. Weber.
Weber votes aye.
Weber is aye. Benson.
Benson, I.
Benson is aye. Brunick.
Brunick, aye.
Brunick is aye. Sarda.
Sarda, aye.
Sarda is aye. Mybom.
Mybom is aye.
Mybom is aye. Minor.
Minor, aye.
Minor is aye. Schramm.
Schramm, aye.
Schramm is aye. Mayor Johnson.
Johnson, aye.
Mayor Johnson is aye. New business item 4-11 passes 8-0.
Number 12 under new business is consideration of memorandum 21-62 regarding a request from the USBC for the 2021 Women's State Tournament to be held in Yankton, and this would be in the amount of $3,500. What is your pleasure? Perhaps we want staff to explain what they know about this request.
Sure, Honorable Mayor, members of the commission, I'll let you know what I know. For those of you that aren't familiar with the sport of bowling, USBC stands for United States Bowling Congress. And Mr. Jim Palmer and Ms. Jan Putman have made a request to the city that the city commission consider a BBB contribution for a tournament that they have ongoing throughout the months of April and May for the South Dakota State USBC. It's a women's tournament. We did receive a flyer today that we emailed out to the commission, which tells a little bit about the tournament. So it's over the course of a number of weekends, and my understanding, if this is similar to past tournaments, is that folks from all over the state come and bowl, and because they're multiple day, they are staying overnight in Yankton if they're not, able to drive home yet and drive back and forth. So another thing just to recognize is that this would fall under that category of a shoulder season type event. We always talk about, the things that are maybe a little more off-season that promote visitorship and tourism in our community. So that is one of these items. We did request a little bit more information in terms of how many bowlers are expected over the course of the weekends, and a little bit more specificity about how these funds would be used. Did not receive that information. However, in the past, when a contribution has been made to the USBC, it was the commission asked that it be made to the organization, not to Yankton Bowl. So there was a concern that, it would look like we were contributing to somebody's specific business when, in fact, the intention is for the tournament. So it would have to be used for tournament purposes. I also recall from the last request that, like many tournaments, these types of bowling events are bid on. So a community has to spend a little bit of energy and money to get these tournaments to our community. The success that they had last time with their tournament certainly probably renders us more likely to have more tournaments, which is great. But I remember hearing from Mr. Palmer that tournament goers had a really good experience the last time. And I believe that was a high school tournament. So I believe this is adult women's tournament. So that's what I know about the tournament. I was under the understanding that Mr. Palmer would be present, but I did not have the opportunity to speak with him as I was out when he contacted staff. And he is not in the room this evening. Maybe he's on YouTube. I don't know. But that's what the information I have about the request. Our recommendation is that you discuss this proposal and you take your action. Typically, we like to have a little more information, as you know. From what I know of past tournaments, I would say that this does fall into the purview of the types of things that the commission has supported in the past, if that's helpful to you.
Thank you, Amy. Does anyone want to make a motion? Is there something we want to discuss?
I'll make a motion that we fund the request of $3,500 to be coming out of the Triple B to be used towards the USBC.
I'll second that. Minor.
Sorry, we have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion now?
This is Commissioner Brunick. I guess I'd like to see some information on it. We don't know how many people are coming. We haven't been able to get any information. It doesn't seem right to be handing out $3,500 when we don't even know what is taking place. I think I'm in favor of doing this, but I do believe that there has to be some, series of steps in place. It can't just be that you ask for it and you don't say what the benefits are going to be or how many people are going to come, and then get it. I don't think it's I don't think it's the correct way to go about it. This is Brunick again. I'm sorry, I couldn't come up with my mind thought, but I think it sets a bad precedent, and I think that we should not do it. That you do have to come forward with a proposal. It can't just be that you come down and say, I'd like you to fund this.
This is Commissioner Mybom, and I would agree with everything that Commissioner Brunick just said. Certainly, this is the kind of event that we appreciate seeing here inside city limits, but for us to approve $3,500 with so little detail aside from a flyer related to the event, my hope, I suppose, would be perhaps the CVB has a role in this. I know we don't have a memorandum of understanding with the Convention and Visitors Bureau at this point in time, but with that being said, whether or not there's grant funding for this style of event, different from previous events that this entity has helped host, I don't know, but I would feel that the CVB could certainly be a resource to these individuals to better prepare them to have what I would say is maybe a more appropriate, better presented agenda item for us to consider.
Mayor and Commission, if this does not pass the commission, I understand you have a motion and a second. The tournament is going on through a number of weekends, and we can certainly go back to Mr. Palmer and try to get more information, talk with Nancy Winandy and see what the CVB may have available right now and try to get a little more detail. If Mr. Palmer's unable to provide us something in writing, I could, if I can have a chance to visit with him, I could get some more information and try to write a more thorough memo for you to have more information if that's, you'd like to reconsider it when you have more information.
I will say from my part, I was hoping Mr. Palmer would be here tonight so he could give us some of these details that we lacked. And I know it's not for city staff trying to get those details, so I don't know if there's a desire to amend the motion to table it for now until we can learn more.
That's what I would request. I would like to table it into the next meeting until we have more information.
So we have a motion to amend to table. Do we have a second for that?
I would second
We have
Commissioner
a-
Benson's motion.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion of the amendment to table this item for now?
You're saying table till the 26th?
Yes.
I just think could be a really neat opportunity if we have the information in front of us. So let's give Mr. Palmer, Ms. Putnam some time to produce that and then make a decision.
All right. Does anyone in the audience want to address the commission on this? No? Brad, any YouTube comments that we should be aware of?
No comments at this time.
All right, Al, let's vote on the amendment to table until our next meeting.
Okay, and this, excuse me, this is roll call on new business item 4-12 and the motion to table until the next meeting. Benson.
Benson, aye.
Benson is aye. Brunig.
Brunick, aye.
Brunig is aye. Sarda.
Sarda, aye.
Sarda is aye. Mybom.
Mybom is aye.
Mybom is aye. Minor.
Weiner, aye.
Minor is aye. Schramm.
Schramm, aye.
Schramm is aye. Weber.
Weber is aye.
Weber is aye. Mayor Johnson.
Johnson, aye.
Mayor Johnson is aye. Motion to table 4-12 passes 8-0.
All right, and so we still have the original motion to approve, to approve the request. Is there any more discussion before we vote on that? What?
It's tabled. It's.
Okay.
Yep.
I thought we were voting on the amendment.
No, you voted to table it, so that stops all discussion until you bring it off the table again with a motion, second, and a vote.
Charlie, thank you for being there for me in my time of need. With that, there is no other business on tonight's agenda, so I would request a motion to adjourn.
Benson, so moved.
Brunick, second.
We've got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Is anyone opposed? Is anyone abstaining? This meeting is adjourned. Take care, everyone.